So we're here. This is episode number 426. As you know, every Monday here at Tropical Nomad, we have an incredible guest, again, a wonderful guest. So Dr. Soebowo Musa, who is, as you mentioned before, he is the head of the MBA program, Master Business Program at Swiss German University, which is the first established in 2020? 2000. You see, I was looking at Isla. It's established in 2000, and it's the first international university here in Indonesia. Now, tonight, we're going to be talking about investing in Indonesia. So if you're either here, maybe looking to see, hey, I'm looking at my options in Indonesia, or maybe you've been here for a number of years already, and you're looking to kind of, optimize what you're doing and perhaps, plan a little bit for the future. Or you just may have arrived here, maybe perhaps in Bali or elsewhere in Indonesia, and you're wondering how to orientate yourself. So in a minute, I'm going to just give you a little bit of background about our guest. Before that, I understand that there will be people that perhaps haven't seen SpeakuP Monday before who are watching tonight. So the intro will be a little bit longer than usual. So I'll give you a little bit of background. So I founded SpeakuP Monday around 5 years ago. This is episode 426, as I mentioned. And look, it's about entrepreneurism and social impact. It's become this award-winning show. We've had from the co-founder of Gojek to other multi-billion-dollar companies in about 10 different industries, all the way through to local heroes, both Indonesian and expat, that perhaps you've never heard of, okay? And in the process, we've become award-winning. We've been recognized and endorsed by people like Forbes, Business Council. We've been recognized and endorsed by both the provincial tourism in Bali and as well as tourism at the national level, and also picking up awards such as #1 Bali Changemaker of the Nuanu Social Fund. So we, as I said, RIB and Associates is a growth strategist and a gateway to Indonesia for foreign companies that want to enter, as well as Indonesian companies that want to grow within Indonesia. We locate the right networks. We run feasibility studies so you know exactly what you're getting into and who you're getting in bed with, so to speak. Now, I think that's long enough. So look, firstly, I just want to say welcome to the show, Dr. Soebowo. It's great to have you here. Thank you for flying from Jakarta to be with us here in Bali.
And thank you for inviting us to your SpeakuP. I think that's quite an honor for us to be a participant in your program.
Yeah. Thank you. And look, part of this, I will mention her, Esther Dangozo, if you're watching. She's the one who linked us together.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and she's, an alumni.
And
from there as well. But look, I'm going to take maybe a little minute or so just to give you some background on Dr. Soebowo Musa. So an expert in strategy, corporate finance, and risk management with extensive experience in management consulting, banking, and executive education. Now, he also holds a PhD in strategic management from Universitas Indonesia and MBA from NYU Stern School of Business. I've heard of that one too. He has contributed significantly to corporate restructuring, M&A, and strategic leadership, professional experience, management consulting, banking, finance, and executive education. Now, his educational background, I mentioned the PhD in strategic management from Universitas Indonesia, an MBA in finance and international business, NYU, MS, and BS in electrical engineering from NYU. We're about halfway through now. Then we have the knowledge fields: strategy, leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, corporate finance, M&A, risk management. And then teaching areas are strategic management, leadership, international finance, research methods. We're getting towards the end. Certifications in risk management certification, levels 1 to 5, investment manager license, and underwriting license. There you go. It's not often that I have to pull out the paper, right, and go the whole side to introduce a guest. But one of the things which I really appreciate about you that I've noticed from from the word go, you're a very laid-back man. You know, you're very open, very friendly. I mean, where do you think? I know it's not the right place to start such an interview, but
That's okay.
yeah, but like, have you always been so open to people, open to learning? Give us a bit of your background. How does that connect?
Okay, so I think learning is not becoming only owned by certain people or certain group. So learning is for everybody, and when we learn, I believe that learning is a continuous thing. Okay, so true, you got the PhD, and then once you graduate, means that's it. If you don't keep learning, meaning that your PhD also becoming obsolete. So when you mentioned about all those, the education background, my education background, actually that is in the past, right? So, but I think learning is more important thing when you continue learning, so you keep updating yourself. And I think being open means also that you also will open to accept others' views, and that is make us more in terms of increasing our knowledge rather than we close and we don't open it. So that's why I'm pretty much laid back, and that what you said is true. Even in my students also saying like it's kind of different than when the professor in here, especially in Indonesia, but that's me. I mean, it's all, I think openness is very important.
And look, just a few more questions on this realm. I find it very interesting, right? So this openness, you know, so when you were growing up as a kid, you know, was it something that was in your family that, you know, that created the ground, you know, the fertile soil for you to be this person? Or was it something else that happened to you when you were a kid, say, that kind of gave you more of an international perspective and more openness towards receiving the words of others?
Okay, I think I grew up in a family that is quite open in terms of different ideas, things like that. And when I grew up, I think it's a bit different. When I was a kid, my parents never really asked me, have you done your homeworks? Let me see your homework. And even they rarely say whether your grade is A or your grade is B, but it's becoming our own responsibility to do that. And then when I study abroad, especially in US, that is also enhanced the way that I becoming more open, because I think when you open yourself, meaning that you open for different ideas, things like that, you know. So.
You know, thank you. The question that just pops in is that, you know, unity and diversity is the motto of Indonesia. This Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, right? So, interestingly enough, there's quite a few Indonesians that have gone overseas and learnt and come back and received the knowledge and have learnt, right? And have learnt to also pass that knowledge on. Okay, all right. So, my question then is, you know, for Indonesians, this might be just for yourself, right? What did America teach you? Because again, just to preface that, I believe that it's always about an exchange.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah.
no matter where you're from.
Right.
Some people are good at this, but not good at that. Some people are great at that, but not good at this. So we can exchange ideas, and we can become better as a result of it. So then back to the question of, you know, so being Indonesian, moving to America to study, what maybe one or two things do you really enjoy or appreciate that the American culture taught you and kind of allowed you to grow?
Okay, I think one thing that is make a difference is the way how you use your critical thinking. Okay, in the U.S., even when we was in the university, they encourage us to be critical, but in Indonesia, even though we're talking about the unity in diversity, but the critical thinking is not as encouraged, so to speak. But right now, with all these international students and the international school, that is, I see the changes. Because back then, in my days, if you as students, in terms of providing or voicing your critic, especially to the teachers, I think that is a bit restricted in a sense. It's not really written, but you are not supposed to oppose to your senior people and things like that. So I think the view is being a critical is not the same as it's nothing to do with whether you respect or disrespect the person. And I think that's what differentiate between the education in the US that I found it. I don't know whether you found it when you in here in terms of because you are restricted in terms of your critical thinking, then the way that you voice, you open up your idea also sometimes is not clear, so to speak. Yeah, but I see this changing. It's getting better. Back in my generation, probably in my generation, right? So it's different.
Our generation, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that the big difference of it in terms of the critical thinkings of it.
You know, one of the things that because Ilham over here, and obviously yourself, we met up yesterday here at Tropical Nomad, had a great chat, and part of what you're saying is really important for the conversation that we're going to have today. So we had this kind of breakdown into three areas, right? So socio-economic, socio-political, and socio-cultural, right? As really important aspects of the Indonesian investing climate.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's get on to that. So firstly, maybe if you could just quickly describe what each one means, and then we'll get into a bit deeper on what it is.
So sometimes when we talk about the investment, whether the investor or the one that the recipient of it, they tend to not to neglect, but then to overlook this social economic. Social economic is basically how the country or the people in that particular country do the business, and what are their tendency and things like that. So that is the social economic side. What's the habit? What is the custom? Even though they don't say it, but the behavior will dictate how they behave on that, especially when we're talking about the economy side of it. Okay, so for example, Indonesia. Since some of you are investors here, can I ask questions to them?
Of course you can.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have
So when you invest in Indonesia, the end product, how many of you that really are creating something, or you just produce goods for the consumption?
Right. So I'm going to call them out. Yeah. So how many of you in your entrepreneurial careers, the product has been creation of something like a product, a good or service? So we have one.
Okay.
And then how many have, so it's been like a marketplace. So you've taken a product which has been produced somewhere else, and you're marketing it or you're selling it.
Create the trading in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So about like 1/5 of the room for each.
Right. So that's why when you say a trading, and in fact, if you look at the investment in Indonesia, mostly at the end of the day, it's a trading oriented. Okay. When I say creating is something like, for example, iPhone. When the Apple, they create something, and at the end of the day, they do the trading, but they create something that new. But I think that's part of the socioeconomics, because in Indonesia, when we grew up, we tend to say, okay, if we can buy, why bother to create? Why bother to produce? So as simple as our glasses here, the glass frame, is coming from where? Have you ever heard that this is made in Yogyakarta?
No.
So this thing is not an expensive one, right? It's just ordinary products. So that is part of the social economics. And also the social economic also, because we are more on the consumption side of it, that's why we see like Tokopedia, Shopee is flourishing.
Gojek as well.
Gojek as well. If we look at all these entrepreneurs, the startups that are very successful, I think most are in the part of the consumption. It's not really creating. Like in China, Huawei, they're creating their own operating system. Okay, in China, they're creating the electric car, BYD and things like that. But in Indonesia, that is part of the social economics. And because since birth, we were taught that if we can buy, why bother you create? And I think there's a positive side of it, right? Meaning that when you certain level, it sounds like we are all Indonesian are very rich. Everything we just buy. We are not producing things, okay? And because of that, then last night we talked about becoming divergent and the convergent thinking. Because when we tend to buy, we tend not to think how to create. So, and we rely on that. So that's why we keep talking about Indonesia has a better labor cost, things like that. But eventually that has to be go away because a country cannot just rely on the comparative advantage of the labor. Because eventually the labor will be getting more expensive as they advances. Okay, so I think that the socio-economic from the perspective of it. So a lot of the people here is that's why when Tokopedia boom, because it's e-commerce. And even the government initially also was so encouraging, right, of all these unicorn things. But then after certain things, they say, how come that most of the goods that are sold by Tokopedia and Shopee are made in somewhere else, not Indonesia? Because that is part of the socioeconomics. And because of that, we also focus on selling the raw material rather than the finished good, including the refined oil as well. So logically, when we sell raw material and then we buy finished good, I think that is a bit, in the investment we call it what? We buy high and we sell, we sell low and we buy high because we sell the raw material and then we buy the finished good. Logically, in most of the cases, the finished goods is always more expensive than the raw materials.
So now that's the social dynamics. So now socio-economic and social political.
Okay, now the social political is basically if we look at the country that is an advanced country, how many number of the political party in that country? For example, take Singapore or German. How many?
So generally 2 or 3
right.
political parties, right?
In Indonesia,
yeah, Germany have a lot. Yeah, that's right.
Do you think have more than Indonesia? We have 33 political parties. Okay.
When I heard that, it kind of blew my mind as well. Wow, okay.
I mean,
I didn't know.
the official one, the legal political party. Of course, when they go through the election, then it will be screened up. But still around, I think it's around 11 or 12 or something like that. So that is the social politics under the Indonesia. So basically, that's why investors, some of the complaint is that how come the regulations, the legal are changing, the laws are changing, because you have these 11 or 10 political parties. And you know that the political party is in the parliament, they drive this becoming a legislative, right? So I think that's part of the social politics. So no wonder that some of the people saying that when we're talking about Indonesia, let's be honest that a lot of people are talking about the corruption, things like that, which to eradicate completely, I think that's impossible because all the country has this corruption, but it's different level of the corruptions. But with the number of this political party, Rob, I think that will increase the uncertainties. The level for higher uncertainties will be there. Okay, so that's on the social politics side.
Yep. So then we've got the socio-economic.
The social culture, right? So the social culture is when you invest in Indonesia. Sometimes I heard from the investor, one of the weakness is the productivity of the people. But I don't know whether that is true or not. Is that right?
Absolutely. For what you're paying is lower wages, productivity is a lot lower as well. So it kind of evens out.
Correct. And in terms of the social culture, it's because that's becoming the habit, Rob, because that's why when we look at, take example of the China, and the study has shown also, for, like say, for simplicity, like one employee can do like 100 jobs, whereas in Indonesia, probably one employee can deliver 10 jobs. So that is also part of the social culture that we tend to see very calm in sign, quote unquote, kind of like a relaxed type of thing. So I think that's impacting on the productivity side of it. So that is part of the social culture, and also is something to do with the education as well when we're talking about the social culture. Because a lot of the Indonesian that they went out and then they have do a lot of these studies, and then they come back here, but in terms of the job coverage also is not. So those three are intertwine each other on this that make investment is so to speak difference. When we talk about the investment, sometimes we talk about the number, the finance, but I think that's the easiest part of it. But the most difficult one is how much that you want to provide that, considering all this, the three aspects of these things.
You know, thank you for that. Again, yesterday when we had this chat, I was like, and I was like, there's so many things that just dropped in. That divergent, convergent thinking, brilliant. And then breaking it down into those three, socioeconomic, sociocultural, and socio-political. Yeah. And so, look, one other thing which comes up is, you know, maybe there are some people that may be watching this for the first time. So just a few statistics I'm sure you're going to correct me on later. So one of the things is that, so with Indonesia, you know, was it 700 plus cultures, 500 plus languages. So let me say it again, 700 plus cultures, 500 plus languages. Almost, 280, working towards 300 million people. And I think the last election of the voting electorate, I think 60% were under the age of 30.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the youngest countries, and also one of the youngest adopters of technology in the world.
Correct.
Right? And then fertility rate that is on the increase.
Yeah.
And then a few other things, which I think we spoke a little bit about Sri Mulyani, the finance minister, and then we spoke a little bit about, you know, which I think will be interesting for people to get a bit of background about, you know, how Indonesia bounced back so quickly to the point where it's leading the world economies. You know, what was the cause of that, and where is that today, and what do you see for the future?
Okay. So the 2022, we have been very good in terms of the growth. I think that is because of the windfall profit from the price of the commodities. Because as you know, Indonesia is about 43% is still rely on these commodity-related income revenues. The commodity means like oils and mining, the coals, things like that. But when we look at the 2023, which is slightly slowing down, which is about 5.02, 5.03, the GDP. And that's because of, as we know, the price of the commodity is fell. It's at the low peak. That's one why the GDP is quite high. Secondly, Indonesian people are still, in a sense, even though our consumption is slowing down, but again, as the socio-economic, we tend to buy, we don't create. So if we don't create, then we still have to buy. So that is one of the positive side of it. Okay, it's going for 2024. Actually, on the first quarter is very good because the growth is 5.11, which is much higher than the 2023. But I think there are certain challenges. One is right now is the world is a borderless world. Okay, so whatever that we are doing or whatever the other country, especially the big country like the U.S., whether we like it or not, we see our exchange rate now. The value of rupiah is dropping. I think that is also a part of the U.S. policy. So yeah, you're right. On what Ibu Sri Mulyani was saying is true. We did even right now we still did a good. It's better than other ASEAN country in terms of the GDP, but I think there's still challenges that going forward on that.
So now where is because again, this is about investing in Indonesia. We
Yeah.
have people who are watching from overseas,
Yeah.
from Sydney. I know where you are. So the next question is kind of moving towards the future of saying, right, so now we have an understanding of what's at the base, right, of Indonesia
Right.
through those three different areas, which is
Right.
fantastic, okay? So we have an idea, of what underpins it. We have an idea of what maybe some of the gaps are, but we'll go deeper into that in a second. So then for those people watching here saying, okay, I've heard about Indonesia, I know those numbers. I realize that it is the Switzerland of Asia. It's the most powerful economy outside of China in Southeast
Yeah.
Asia, right? It's due to become the fourth largest economy in a few decades, and so on. Okay, so we've got all of that, but where are the gaps for foreign investment or investment in general? Which sectors and why
Okay.
would you direct that to?
Right. So in terms of, that's interesting question when we talk about the which sectors. Actually, we have three big sectors. One, of course, the infrastructure, okay? And that it can be for big players to jump into it because what the government starting on the infrastructure is basically that they would like to do to build these interconnectivities because Indonesia consists of 17,000 islands. So they try to do this infrastructure where infrastructure means basically is interconnectivity. It builds the connectivity. It can be either from satellite, that's what President Jokowi is doing, right? They're launching the satellite. And in terms of the ports, in terms of the toll road, things like that, that is the interconnectivities, okay? But the gap on that is the more that you put on this infrastructure, when you push it too hard, the problem with the socioeconomic, because we cannot produce, okay? So then it will have pressure on the value of the rupiah. So like an asphalt, which is needs for the road, we import it. For the heavy equipment, we cannot produce the heavy equipment to support that infrastructure. It's coming from Komatsu, coming from United Tractors, coming from Deere's from the US, things like that.
And you miss that multiplier effect, as you were saying.
Exactly. So when you push this, and it happens right in 2018, and then the government revised in terms of which of the project on the infrastructure that they would like to be a priority. Because of the more that we go into those things, then it will have a pressure on the value of the rupiah. And that is one of the gap because of the socioeconomics. Okay. The second one sector is on the green. Now, the green economy, this is very interesting because Indonesia right now is whether you are in the finance or non-finance, people are talking about this green, okay, the ESG things, the environment, the social governance. From the finance side, we see is now the OJK, which is the financial authority of Indonesia, they put pressure on the banks to follow their counterpart in the Europe, especially, to be compliant to the Paris Climate Accord. But on the other side, this is where the startup can also participate in the green things. It can be in the retail side. It can be in the a smaller industry thing. So that is on the green themes. The other one, of course, the technology. And Indonesia is basically one of the largest users of this technology. And in terms of the skill, I think we have a very skillful young people here. The difference is the maturity of the digital technology. People know the technology, they know how to create it, but they're still thinking how to use this on what basis. Like the artificial intelligence, they know it, but how they use this. So that is the thing that the area where the investor can go and look at it.
It's great. We've had quite a few people on the show. This is 426 episodes. So the tech sector, we've had quite a few people. And this is both Indonesian as well as expat. So one, and I'm laughing because I always talk about this guy, but he's amazing, right? So Igede Anta Rahman from Bali, And he's created Mandala chains, which is this hybrid layer 1 in the blockchain space that's going to be about how does government interact with normal people on one platform, right? And so on. But there, again, I bring up one. He's partnered with Michael Bonnick, which is Republic Rupiah, which is the largest community Indonesian for Web3 blockchain related matters. I mean, that's just one. There's hundreds that I can think of, right? So I see what you're saying about, you know, the brains trust. There's a guy, Pidi Subangkat, who's the company's desktop IP. He was another one of the sea turtles, you know, went out, worked in the US for some of the biggest companies in the world. And as you know, I think there's 4 or 5 companies in the world that own their own tech. Microsoft, Alibaba, I think there's 2 in America, but there's one here, and it's his company. So Desktop IP own its own technology. And so now they're able to do things like, there's been some data leaks from Indonesia all over the world. But then when you look at where are the cloud systems, they're usually in the US.
Yes.
I'm not saying that the US is doing anything wrong. I wouldn't say that on camera. Did I just say that? I didn't say that. You can't prove it. But now what you have is, you know, an Indonesian who has his own technology, doesn't license it from any one of those companies. It's his. So now he's able to work with the government on security matters to kind of button up that potential loophole. So I see so much of this technology sector thriving. When it comes to the medical sector, you know, this medical tech. So we have the first Monday of every month, we have Health Hub Bali Collaborative, Tracy, 10 years in the making. She's now working with government to roll out this Bali integrative health tourism model. So we've had Dr. Patra, who is the chairman of Bali Medical Tourism Association, on the show quite a few times. But again, so all of these things here are aggregating, bringing in technology, bringing in brains trust, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity and diversity, bring them all together to expand these sectors. But the thing which really interests me in what you've said as a trend is that you're so right. None of them are actually creating. They're using technology from other countries, except PD and Anta. They are creating, but in the medical tech sector, for example, we're using German over here, German technology over here. This one here from Dubai. So it's again, this thing about, you know, at the core of it. You know, are you a creative economy, meaning you create things, produce things, or are you a consumer?
Right. Actually, in Indonesia, on the consumer side, is there. Right, it's just we are lacking on the producer side of it. Okay, so then when one of the dichotomy problem in this Indonesia is, if you've been here for a long time, you will see that the rupiah, it will never go back to the 5 or 10 years ago, the value. It will never. And if we keep like this, it will never. Right now it's 16.2, 16.5. Next year, it can go 17, and then 17.75, 17.72. It continue. Because why? As you said, if the gap is not closed, then but people are still, the more that the investment coming here. So this is also, it's funny. If you look at the data, the higher the foreign direct investment in Indonesia, theoretically, the value of the currency that the country should be strengthening, right? Because there's a foreign investment coming in, right? And then they will invest in here, build up a factory, things like that. But apparently, if you look at the movement of the exchange rate of rupiah and US dollars and the foreign direct investment, as if there is no correlation whatsoever. Because, or sometimes, the higher the FDI, the more depreciated the value of the rupiah. Especially when we talk about the FDI, they're really doing a creation, like they're opening factories and things like that. Because the minute the money coming in, and then also at the simultaneously, the money will just go to buy all this equipment and things like that. But that is the fact of life around here.
So I love this. So far, by the way, we're going to come to questions. So I want to make sure everyone is with us here today. So in a minute, this microphone that Guzman has will come to you. Now, when it does, just remember, usually people do this, and it works, but not here. So you got to point this microphone at your mouth when you speak, and remember you'll be on camera as well. So while you're maybe thinking about what question you might have, let's go and talk about Swiss German University, right? So we have this beautiful monitor here, and you've probably seen it go by and wonder what the hell is going on. So I think while you're thinking of your questions, right, maybe tell us more about Swiss German University. What is it? Why does it exist? What is it trying to do? And where's the opportunity and why?
Okay, so I just give you a bit of history of it in terms of the establishment of this university. Actually, that is during the crisis in Indonesia, when the crisis started in 1998, as we talk about it. So that is prevent some of the students that go overseas, because at the time rupiah usually like $1 back then is equal to less than 2,000 rup. So $1 is equal to 1,800 rupees. Okay, so when the crisis hits, then the rupiah, the $1 will go up to 18,000 back then. So if you ask, is it possible that the rupiah will go to 17 now? Yeah, it's quite possible. Because in 1998, the rupiah went down to $1 to 18,000. So let's say if you pay the tuition in the US back then, it's like, I don't know, like let's say 30,000 US. In rupiah term, for the 2,000, you got 60 million, right? So when it becomes 10,000, it's becoming 300 million. So the founders of this Pak Chris Kanter was thinking like, how can we create the international universities locally, so then it will ease off some of these costs and expenses. So that's why he created this. And I think at that time, there's some collaboration with the Swiss and the German. That is the history. Even until now, we have still the collaboration with the Swiss, which is the IMI, is in the hospitality side of it. And with the German, we have this more on the mechatronics. In fact, Swiss German University is one of the first that introduced a program on the mechatronic, which is the combination between mechanical and the computer and the electrical engineering into one. They call it mechatronics. And then that's on the 2000. So that's a bit of history why that this university was created, was established. And then, of course, during the journey, we expand to different areas. So now we have three big faculty. One is the life sciences, one is the engineering, and the other one, the engineering meaning the IT, the computers, including the artificial intelligence recently. And recently, they also, on the IT side, they have these cyber securities, because nowadays that's becoming cyber securities. And also on the business side. So on the faculty of the business, we have a different concentration. One is under the hotel, the hospitality, and then we also on the communications, and the rest is on the business management. So that's where the things. And we also right now, we expand our collaborations to the US universities and to the Korea universities. So the latest one is with the Wusong University in South Korea in the MBA program, Seoul Bridge International School of Business. So
probably the biggest question I'm going to ask you might be the biggest, we'll see, right? Why should someone do an MBA in general, and why should they do it at SGU?
Okay.
See,
I know that you want to ask that question.
It was like, a member of the audience. No, they did. It was you.
Okay. Actually, it's why MBA is because there's slightly a different academic perspective. And that, I think that's across the world, not only just the SGU. Because when we look at the MBA, we look at more on the business perspective, not on the more on the academic perspective. But sometimes people are confused between you're talking about the theory or you're talking about the business perspective. But I always believe that all this theory was built based on the real practices. I don't think like theory like coming up. You wake up in the morning and then you write down and then you come up with the theory. I don't think it's like that, you know. But so the difference is in MBA is driven by a business cases perspective. So this is, and that's why like the student also coming from different backgrounds, right? So that is becoming enrich the program. I mean, I'm talking about across not only just the SGU, but the MBA program specifically is we learn each other, even though the facilitators as well. Because let's say for myself, I'm bringing more on the, because my background is the banking in the investment banking area. So that's why like when you say about M&A, things like that. But the student, if they're coming from the technology side of it, then we can learn each other. So I think that, and that's especially in the SGU, because on the SGU, we are completely different by, driven by the case studies.
And one of the things which I remember came up as well was that, so you're working with, you know, companies who, like top companies in Indonesia, right? So that's where you're getting your information, support. Right. So maybe tell us a little bit about that. I think that's quite important for people to hear as well.
Yeah, correct. So since, because of the experience from the facilitators like myself, things like that, so we see what the really needs in the industry is, okay? So theory is one thing, but then sometimes you say, well, that's the theory different from the implementation side of it. So I think that it helps when we know, for example, I say coming from the banking, so it's not just the finance that we need for them to understand, but there are different things. Let's say when we're talking about when they would like to be in the M&A, M&A is not just a calculating of the finance, but M&A is talking about how you consolidate or collaborate the people between two companies. I think that is sharing the experience and then you looking at the cases, the real cases. So I think that it helps the students on this kind of thing.
And I mean, one of the other things as well, which comes up, is so we were invited to become mentor with the Founder Institute.
Right.
So the Founder Institute are one of the largest accelerators in the world, right? So there's one here, Founder Institute Bali. I'm a mentor there. Okay. Why do people do that, right? Why do people go to Founder Institute? Because it's part of a network.
Yeah.
And that network is where the juice is, where the value also is. It's in the advice, the support, but the network. So what I see as well with Esther, for example, who introduced us, you know, what she said, I remember it stuck in my head, was that Rob, but she's a person who just loves to study, by the way. Esther's like, oh, I'm going to study you know?
Right.
You know, and we met, who was it the other day? There's a lady who has 9 degrees. Anyway, that's not a story for another day. But here's the thing. So what she was saying was that, Rob, the other students that I meet are already successful in business.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you're meeting the top company executives, CEOs, and up, right?
Right.
So what you're also doing is that it's not what you know, who you know, but who knows you.
Correct.
Right?
So this, I just take example. One of the student, our students, actually he's already a successful businessman in Batam. So his business is he providing the securities. Yeah. So not only just the human side of it, but all the equipment, the surveillance and things like that. And then come up with another students that they're doing in the property side of it. So then they collaborate. So they have the other student, they're working in the mall, things like that, commercial buildings. So then they create this working together relationship with that. So I think that's one of the example. So, right, what you said is true. I mean, MBA it has to be like that in terms of not only that you learn something, but you also try to build your network and the same with the others. Yeah.
Good.
So.
Questions. So we've got this mic over here. I love you, Detlev. He's just straight in. Toby, no pressure, man. I expect it from you. German. And by the way, so we have a member in the audience. Toby's like, I'm never coming again. I'm watching this online. You always pick on me. You know. So apart from the German endorsement, but it's the Swiss. So Roger Federer, please. All right, so Detlef's got a question. Over to you.
Well, I mean, first I have to say my wife and me, we decided to go very creative and creation. So and we have all the trouble with this. So and sometimes we wish to make only trading. So we are on the opposite side. But anyway, what is interesting to hear? You know, I hear about the infrastructure for investors. I hear about the green economy, and I hear about technology. But you mentioned that actually for the infrastructure you need the machines. But where do you see then the field or this advice to the government how to get investment into produce machines? I mean, Indonesia is such a growing society. You need machines in food, for example. You
Exactly.
need machines
Yeah.
in streets, in building, in everything. So, is there a program? I mean, you have Bandung University, what is, if I'm not mistaken, quite well known for technology and certain things.
Yeah, I think that is the one of the issue that is unresolved issue. Because in one hand, the government say we need, let's say, infrastructure. We need an immediate things. So when you say immediate things, obviously it will be very difficult to provide those, to provide that you want to do it immediate. Immediate meaning like they want to build a port, for example. Or they need to build a manufacturing on, they need a machineries. But, you know, so, and then at the end of the day, coming back again, let's buy, you know. And I think that is still the unresolved issue. What you said is correct. If you, as simple as if you go through all this coffee shop here, cafe, and if you ask the coffee machine, is none of it from Indonesia. Okay, because I think has been going on for quite some time, so it's very difficult, you know, because in one hand you still have to live, you still have to make money, right? So all these traders say, okay, I'll bring it from Italy. It's easy as that. So you want to have a coffee shop now, you need immediately, I'll sell it to you.
Well, but the US have this program now that they say we produce everything getting kind of subsidized when it's produced in the US. So it's not rocket science. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the success of the US right now.
Well, yeah. I think, coming back, you have to look at those three things, especially in the social politics side, because sometimes in the social politics, they also part of the players in the economic as well, and they would like to have an instant and immediate. So it seems like last night when you were asking about what's the role of the government, right? Yeah. I mean, does the government needs to do this? I think yes. Because like what you said, in the US, is the government just step in, right? Yeah. Let's subsidize it. Because without the government, I don't think that we'll be able to closer the gap on those things.
I have one other example, and then I'm done.
Listen, it's all good. I just want to say we have another German who just arrived into the room, Julian. No pressure, but you got Swiss German University. We got like 3 or 4 Germans here. I'm loving this. Sorry, Detlef, please go back.
So
yeah.
one more thing. What was interesting, talking about 80-20. When I came to Indonesia, I saw in the department store Matahari in Bali Galleria, talking about 80-20. Yeah. I would guess in the garment department of Bali Galleria there was 80% made in Indonesia, and 20% was whatever,
right,
all over the world a little bit.
Correct.
But it turned around drastically, so now I would guess it's 90-10. 90% is from China, and 10% is from somewhere. And I mean that is the government have to step in. Therefore, they get paid.
Correct, because I think the businesses people they don't really differentiate whether they would like to produce or not. So they just trade, because trading is in sense for them is less headache in terms of dealing with the people, coming back again to the social culture, and it's much simpler. And most of my friends also say, why you have to think about, why you have to create if you can buy? So in a sense, it's already embedded. And I think that is very difficult and unresolved things.
Yeah, please. So we've got a question over here. Ilham, meet Julian. Julian, meet Ilham. No, just there. Julian, put your hand up. Him. There you go. All right. Just say hello. That's okay. That's good. All right. Who's got the next question? Someone had a microphone. I saw the microphone.
Okay.
You got
Okay.
the microphone. So I've got. Take the microphone and say, who's got the next question?
Just to continue with this topic of, you not always need to create everything from scratch, right? To
Yes.
make a production or whatever else. But what do you see the main obstacle for the companies who want to enter the Indonesian market and actually build here? Like, for example, I know that South Korean companies like Hyundai or Kia, they are pretty much keen to build their production and manufacturing in other countries, right? Which is highly subsidized by Korean governments. And like, what are the obstacles for them? Are they welcomed? For example, companies like that, and if they would like to enter, the same question actually going to the waste management players, the big one who's already have all the resources to actually, they just need the land, they just need a workforce, and they just need approval from the government. But somehow the things are not happening. What do you see the main obstacles in this?
I think the main obstacle is nothing to do with the skills. But there's more something to do with more on the political, or the social political, especially when we're talking about the waste. The waste management is because at one time I was trying to involve in a waste management, and at the end of the day they say like, what's in it for the district, the governments, the Pamda and things like that. And I think that is part of the social politics things, because they would also to be players in this part. I'm talking about the waste management. But on the manufacturing in general, it's on the people, on the legal, on the law of the labor law in Indonesia. Okay. But some company managed to be able to resolve that. I know in Indonesia there's a lot of this. You look at the law, it's like a lot of this labyrinth, a lot of layers and layers. But a good of my friend saying that, but isn't that the opportunities? The more complicated the law that is, the more that you can see there's a loophole in that the law. That I don't know whether that is true, but that is some of the comment that because the more layers that thing you play it with the layers on that. Is that true, Toby?
All right, so Toby, the microphone's there. Yeah.
I hope that is not right. That's what I heard.
No, I think more simple is easy. But then I'm German, and we have to follow every regulation there is in Germany. So that's very difficult as well. On the other hand, I just want to say one thing. I don't know what sector you were talking about. So I used to be in manufacturing as well. We sold our listed company to Tencent. So I know quite a bit about manufacturing, and I've helped quite a few manufacturers set up manufacturing actually here, because they are looking since the pandemic for an alternative to China.
Right.
And I try to get them to come here versus going to Vietnam or to Thailand or to some other country. And I'm happy to report that in those areas, which includes electronic, which includes garment, which includes furniture, they actually have a productivity of about 80 to 90% of what they have in China. And they still have a tenth of the all-in salary for their workers. So I think it is possible as long as the right processes are put in place. And having been in China for almost 30 years and having been in manufacturing there during all that time that China grew, I think it's very good that Indonesia is very open. And I think every country has to get this skill and technology transfer to be able to do it. And I have two other points, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
I think so I just want to say it's not the 10%, depending what sector it really is.
Right.
And it really is quite good and a bit higher. I don't know if you have that experience per sector as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. It depending on which sector that you are in. Okay. let's say if you're in the technology, I think that's less problematic. But the thing is, I'm talking about in general. Okay, when I say layers, it doesn't mean that you have to illegally. No, because Indonesia has so many. In fact, it was Indonesia. If you look at the law, I think is very complete. Okay, if you look at all this, the law. But the question is later on is on the most of the people are the enforceability of those regulations. I mean, but you're right. I mean, in certain area you don't see an issue. But in general, we compare with the Vietnam. Obviously, we a bit. Vietnam is faster than us in terms of in certain area. Okay. But I think Indonesia still have a big opportunities because we are 270 million, big countries. It's just depending on how you slice and dice, so to speak, on the Indonesia opportunities.
Well, I would agree. If you're looking at the areas around Semarang, the 7,000 hectare project where all the car manufacturers like VW are coming now.
Yeah.
You're looking at Kendal, which is doing a great job with its special economic zone, its KEC. And other KECs popping up, and I think that'll really help that transfer of information. And I think also, maybe you're talking about the infrastructure. I think China in some ways can be a good example.
Exactly.
The reason that China managed to go forward so strong is because they let a private sector pick up on a lot of these things, especially if you look at the highways when they were building those. I remember when the first highways in South China were being built, it was all 20 years privately owned. And then it went to the government. So I think that's maybe another area to go into. One thing I did wonder about, though, is what you said about the value add, especially on natural resources. And I wonder what your thought is on this, because there's, I think, two sides or two contradictory schools of thought, where some very top economists say, well, if you already have that natural resource, just sell it. Because if you're going to refine the oil or do something with the copper, turn it in something into, into copper.
Nickel as well.
Nickel into copper and these kind of things. It might be better for a developing nation, which we all have to admit Indonesia still is, to just get the cash to build infrastructure rather than find extra funds to build this refining of the different materials. I wonder what your thought on that other train of thought is, that let's just get the cash for these commodities that we have so that we can build our overall infrastructure versus reinvesting that into trying to build a higher value product.
Yeah, I think from the history perspective of it, since back then we have been selling the raw material, right? But we haven't also seen the movement of the infrastructure building as what we expected. So I think that's probably that the government see that. So then the way that now they change it, that like on the natural resources, they also have the smelter and things like that. But I think if the condition is like what you said from the one thought saying that if you're in the development country, why don't you just sell the raw materials and then you use that to build your infrastructure? Correct. But in Indonesia, I think it's slightly different because when you sell it, because it's becoming a cash, and cash is very fungible, right? So it can go everywhere. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about the cash is fungible, right? Is that right? I mean, that the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. I understand. I've been doing business in Indonesia long enough to understand that as well. Yes, thank you.
That's a conversation for later. Toby, wonderful, brother. Going to pass to you. And I know you have a question here as well. Julian, if you feel like chiming in, mate, feel free. Please, yeah, Isla, yeah.
Thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
So
a bit closer to you. Yeah.
As a child, the first thing I ever knew about Indonesia was the incredible volcanoes. And now, as an adult, I'm really interested in natural disaster risk reduction. And I'm curious, I know almost nothing about this, but are there ways that Indonesian businesses are able to protect themselves from volcanic eruption risk? Are there things like financial products? Can businesses get insurance for volcanoes?
Okay, probably on the insurance side, yes, we do have. Okay, but mostly also it's coming from the international insurance company, and then they do the reinsurance, things like that. Okay. Now, as far as on your first question is basically how to protect from the.
Like, is it a good investment for Indonesian businesses?
For
To protect themselves financially, like to think ahead to this remote, far future possibility where we have these catastrophic risks. Is this something that mainstream businesses will even be talking about?
Okay. To be honest, at the moment, unfortunately, not that many the businesses, because they think that is something that is the nature things that is will be very difficult to predict and to protect. So they will just do whatever that they could. I mean, they do have the protocol. Let's say if one of the volcanoes erupted, what are the things of it? But in terms of protecting it from any damaging, I think that is a bit. I'm not aware of that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ayla. So we're going to pass over here. We have a question for you. And so there was another question that I was going to ask you, but I think we covered it actually before. But I've got a few more questions here, but let's go to the question first. Yeah,
I just wanted to make a comment about, I guess, the rupiah falling. I've been sort of watching it sort of falling as well. And I guess from my perspective, I'm a university lecturer in entrepreneurship and innovation.
Right. Yeah.
I'm also an investor, and I run a fund as well. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've sort of noticed that with Indonesia, it's a one-trick pony. And there's no real value created. And if you want, I guess, income to rise and the dollar or the rupiah to rise, you've really got to create value in the economy. And value is only created through innovation and creativity.
Correct.
And if you don't have that, and I don't see that in Indonesia, unfortunately, I see everyone's trying to trade, everyone's buying low, selling high, and that's the way they make money here, right? So it's the same as Australia. Australia's a one-trick pony as well. Actually, two-trick pony, property development and mining. And that's just not a good future. And I think there needs to be more encouragement around innovation, especially around innovation. Because you look at the strongest economies in the world, they have the masters of innovation. You look at China, you look at America, and creativity.
We were having the same conversation yesterday.
Yeah. So that's what I see lacking in Indonesia. And it's a shame that they look outwards to say, okay, we wanted to... bring the machines in,
right.
And it's kind of a lack of foresight as well. And I think also Indonesia doesn't have the ecosystem as well. So to be a functional ecosystem, you need 5-6 elements, and that includes transparency as well, and as well as ability to bring money into the country and take money and transfer money.
Yeah.
But also things as services associated along the way. And I just don't see that in Indonesia. Especially around sort of venture capital. I mean, I know it's growing, and I know it's changing, but really, I think the missing element is creativity.
Exactly.
And innovation.
I completely agree, because last night we talked about it, right?
Yeah.
And why that the lack of creativity is not that we don't. I mean, talking about the people, probably they do have, but they are not encouraged to do that. Okay, and. They're only becoming creative when they go somehow going outside Indonesia something, So I think that is the thing that also is a challenge for Indonesia on that.
And I think they've got to be able to manufacture, push it out. You look at like Apple. Why is it the biggest company in the world? Because they manufacture and they push it out, right, as well as innovate. So, and that's one of the problems here is there's no, coming back to what Toby was saying, there was no value created in mining. There's no value in extraction, because there's no upside. I mean, in Australia, we dig the iron ore out, send it to China, then bring it back and build a factory with it. It just doesn't make sense, right? So I think it lacks foresight and the ability for government to understand that. I think it's a lot to do with the families or the mafia that run Indonesia, and also the nepotism and all that sort of thing. There's no need to be able to do that
Right.
because there's no will.
Right.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
No,
So,
that
yeah.
I think that's
Thank
true.
you
I think
for contributing.
I think that is the challenge that for all of us in Indonesia. I mean, because at the end of the day, is they go into like what you said. It's a no value added. This is just the trading of it, you know. And sometimes Indonesia also sometimes we make ourselves happy saying that we are a rich country. We have all these resources. Yesterday I was talking to Robert. I think from my perspective, when we say we are rich, meaning that you make yourself rich. It's not something that you don't work and then you're becoming something. That is not rich. That is a blessing, right? When we talk about the natural resources, nobody put that in Indonesia, right? No, none of us, even our forefathers, they don't like dig in a nickel and then they put the nickel inside in the earth and then right now say, oh, we are rich now. We just have all these things. That is the thing that because why that we don't create the value on that. Yeah. And I think I agree on that.
Yeah.
So-
Value only comes through manufacturing. Real value, not even through technology. Technology is just an enabler.
Right. So that's why when you look at Indonesia, sometimes during the Suharto era, they call industrializations, and then they somehow it's deindustrialization, and now it's try to be a reindustrialization again.
So we've got a question here from Detlev, yeah?
But I must say, I have also a good example, and in Bali. I mean, it's very, very small scale, but I learned it from my wife that there's a circle of people in garment, but in a bit of a high class garment, in woven fabrics, and the wife of the governor from Bali, she really kicked ass there and created. I mean, that was so outstanding. I mean, my wife suffered sometimes about this, but this lady, this Ibu Costa, she did a hell of a lot in that. And I hope one day this is seen also, because she is the person who can push exactly what we are talking about.
Yeah.
This creation and creativity and the willing to produce something.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Ibu Costa, sorry.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that is very patchy in terms of in Indonesia. It's not sharing by the majority of people. So then that's why you see in certain area, in some patchy area, you see the creativity.
You know, it's interesting because this conversation we had yesterday we pretty much covered, you know, all of this. And that's what kind of, what we were left with was partly was, you know, education is really like the key. And at the core of it, because again, everywhere has something, but nowhere has everything, right?
Yeah.
So there's nowhere one country that's perfect to everything.
Correct.
Right? And
Yeah.
we were talking about Singapore for this, we're talking about China for that, we're talking about US for this. So we were kind of taking a stroll around the world, seeing which countries do which things well, and what can Indonesia, in this case, learn from it, and also go the other way. It's an exchange. But we're going to come back to Toby. All right, give me 1 second, Toby. So yeah, I'm interested that it's the sentiment is being repeated. Toby, over to you.
Having dealt a lot with the German education system as well in the past, I was wondering, because you mentioned here medium of instruction is English, do you also teach German at the university? Because in Germany we don't have that exchange rate problem, since we provide free education for everybody in the world who can speak German, and we welcome anybody. And I was just wondering if you are also offering that to your students, so that maybe the next course they can continue in Germany.
Yes, we did. In fact, in SU, we also have the student needs to learn German to a certain level, that when they continue, if they would like to continue to Germany, in terms of the language, at least they can manage on that side. You know. Great
point, Toby. I'm learning so much. If you pass the microphone to your right to Elena, she has no idea we're going to do this, but if you pass the microphone, sorry, it's Vina. All right, so Elena, so later on, because I know that you've taken the plunge, right, and you're going to go and do a great course in SGU. So my question for you, give you lots of time to think about it, is, you know, what are you looking to gain by doing it? Just that one question. What are you looking to gain by doing it? Veena, over to you, darling.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bowo, for being here. My question is on socio-cultural and socio-economics. As you touched on earlier, you spoke about how productivity and how it's very low in Indonesia. How do you think education can empower and accelerate that to boost FDI and everything else?
Yeah, I think there's a disparity in terms of the education, especially in among the labor side of it. Okay, so but I think the government has been trying to do a lot on this, but I think they need to be more firm in terms of things. Now, as you know, one of the challenge also is the labor law and the labor union in Indonesia. Okay. In terms of the productivity, if you look at, if you ever look at what are they're requested to be embedded into the regulations, sometimes they ask more than the counterpart in any part of the world. Okay, but of course, again, that is it's different area. They have a different view of it on this kind of things, because Indonesia is what you said. We have a lot of this. 500 languages and things like that. So in each area has a different way in terms of the social culture and the social economics, the degree of it. But I believe education could create the bridging on to linkages or to escalate those things, you know.
Thank you, Veena. Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So pass back over there. So before we get to you, Elena, I hope you don't mind me putting you in there. So there's a few questions here which we'll quickly want you to go through, Soebowo. So navigating legal and regulatory frameworks for investors. So then the preface to that is, yeah, if I'm from overseas, I'm looking to invest my money. I think about Indonesia for different reasons. You know, again, we're talking broad brushstrokes here. So if I want to invest my money in Indonesia, you know, what are some of the challenges I'm going to face? What are some of the solutions to those challenges? And where would you like to see it if you believe that there should be some enhancements to make it easier, if that's the question?
So I guess the current government actually they try to facilitate that by creating this OSS. It's a one single application of it, which is good. I mean, the regulation is there, the system there. But I had also in Indonesia is sometimes one of the challenges is the implementation side of it, because each area has a different, even though coming from one regulations, but the implementation can be different from one area to the area. Probably Bali is more friendly compared to, let's say, we talk about in, I don't know, Makassar, for example, even though we're coming from the same regulations. One of the example is when you're talking about the land title, okay, when you talk to BPN, Badan Pertanahan Nasional, in Bali, it may not be the same as in Jakarta, or may not be different again in things, despite the fact there's a umbrella regulations on that. So I think one of the things that the investor is they need to be prepared to see this different implementation of it, and well, is the fact of life on that. Okay, and in terms of what expected in the future is obviously that if you have a one single system or centralized things, then in terms of the implementation also has to be enforced strongly. I mean, in terms of the implementations. But I think another challenge is, as Indonesia is also have the autonomy area, right? Yeah. Each province has the autonomy things to manage different things. So I think that is the one that decentralization that is a challenge. You know, back then is when there is no autonomy area, everything is centralized in the capital, meaning the central governments. But right now with the autonomy, then it's different provinces, a different way of doing it. So I think that is it's good in terms of decentralizations and giving the autonomy. But I think again, in certain area that needs to be standardized and in terms of the implementations of it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, Hadis, if you're around, so in about 10 minutes, Hadis or IU will start the food. All right. So, everyone, you're going to get fed, you're going to get drinks. Looking forward to that. I know some of you are like, I'm hungry. So, we're going to get that food and drinks into in about 10 minutes. So, yeah, if you let Hadis know or IU. So, two more questions from me, real quick ones. So, we've got navigating strategies for sustainable and impactful investments. So, strategies for sustainable and impactful investments, what comes up for you?
Okay. When you say sustainable, meaning is because right now the term sustainable is like dealing with
So not the green one,
not the green one,
but
right?
sustainable
But
as in
sustain as a business that
as a
can be an
business.
ongoing concern,
There
right?
you go, yeah.
Okay. So
good clarification.
because nowadays when we're talking about sustainable, is people like we going thinking about the green things. Okay, but I think even in Indonesia, you still need this creativity in terms of to sustain your business, because otherwise eventually will be outdated, and somebody will just come in and do the things. As simple as when we talk about the coffee shop. Okay, like for example, when we talk about Kenangan Kopi Kenangan, sorry. If you look at their evolution is, the minute they got all these series A, B, and C investment, they also changed in terms of their products, and they also changing the target market. So that's why you see now Kopi Kenangan, they go into upscale market by introducing the heritage, whereas initially they are not in the radar of the Starbucks. Okay, Starbucks doesn't see Kopi Kenangan as the competitors back then, but they keep changing of that things. I think the key point is needs to be agile in a real sense. It's not in just the theoretical that you need to be agile, but I think to be agile, you need to be an innovative. Innovative not necessarily on the technology, but I mean the way that you do things differently. I think that's, and I think that's one. And
Okay.
yeah.
And then the last question, and then we'll go to Elena, then we'll come back to you. By the way, so remember, if double checking, Hadis, so yeah, about 7 minutes, the food, yeah, be ready. Thank you. So, real life success stories and lessons learned from Indonesian investments. So, what comes up for you when we talk about real life success stories and lessons learned from Indonesian investments?
I think one of the success story and why they're successful, I would say like an example of Kopi Kenangan, because now there's a foreign investor also in it, even though that's in the retail and in the services area. And one of the success is they keep creating a different products. It can also be in Indonesia is because we are a marketplace. So if you invest in that area of it, I think the key point is how to make your product perceive is a difference, right? Because when you're talking about there's another investment. Baka Coffee. Yeah, they just opened in Jakarta in Plaza Senayan, and if you look at it, was packed, but the price also is high. And people don't care about it. Well, we'll see how sustained they are, right? But I think they will be, they could sustain because they're offering a very unique, different way. The most expensive cup of coffee is 1.6 million rupees.
1.6 million
rupees.
Mamma mia.
They call it a Baka coffee. I think, I don't know from where. I think from either from France or from somewhere. So that's the way that the cheapest one is 250,000 one cup. And when they open until today, it's always fully. And you see online, long queue.
Wow.
Yeah. Of course, the packaging is different. Okay, when you want 500,000 coffee, they put the cream is different, a special cream, and then the way that they eat it also, they have a different way of. So you don't put it in the coffee and then stir it. So you just put the cream and then you just dip it in your coffee and then you just taste it like that.
I think that's amazing. So Guzman.
Yeah, it's amazing. That is a foreign investment.
So we're going to go to Toby over here. Then we'll do Elena, and then we'll come back. And I've got one more question for you, which I'll let you know in advance, so you have time to think about it. Toby.
Yeah, I had one more question because it's a sector we didn't touch on, but I mean it's so prevalent, which is the agricultural sector. I mean it's over 30% of the land in Indonesia is still agricultural, but it only makes up around 13% of the GDP.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, do you see any innovation in there that can improve the agricultural output and less dependency, which Indonesia hardly has, but lately has had on imports, especially in the food sector?
Yeah, I think that is the one that I also forgot to mention, but the sector, one of the sector that the investor could also look at it. I think there's several things to looking at on the agriculture. One is on the agriculture in itself. The other one is on the supply chains to the agricultures. Okay, one of the things that in Indonesia is more problematic on the supply chains of the agriculture. Of course, the agriculture itself there's a potential to improve it, but the problem is on the supply chains, because for example, there is a lot of the supply chain that are really scattered. Okay, so then they cannot really put it in integrated supply chains for the things. So because I also at that one point I was doing a discussion with this Australian aids, which is they are sponsoring this agriculture supply chains financing. So they would like to somehow help all these farmers and things like that. And they have some challenges to do that. So either at the distributor of it or at the people that's selling the fertilizer, things like that. So I think that's the area that the investor can create these supply chains. So it will help.
You know, great question, Toby. So on the show over the years, we've had a few solutions to that using blockchain. So 5 Harvest O, a guy called Sabdo Yusimentado. Yeah, his surname I messed up. Sorry, Sabdo. So basically, 5 Harvest O, what it's doing is that it's using blockchain to empower farmers. Because as you said, you know, and I also spent some time with the Secretary General, is that right, of Agriculture for Indonesia, Indah Megawati. Okay, so we went around Tabanan talking to farmers, and part of the challenge which the farming community faces is that, the money, for example, for the product itself, the raw material, the price is very low. That's one problem. The second problem is to get the fertilizer.
Correct.
The price is very high.
Okay,
So at the end of the day, they need to borrow the money from someone because they don't have it, which then leads to the middleman who also can lend the money and then fix the price of the raw material that they're going to buy back, which is below market price. Yeah. So it's already very low, but now it's below market price. Correct. So it's almost impossible to make a living. That was one aspect. The other aspect was storage. So the fact that they have this product that they haven't got anywhere to store for a period of time puts further pressure on the need to sell quickly, which again forces the price down. Because it's saying, well, you need to sell it quickly. Okay, well then I'm just going to wait, right? Then you'll get more desperate. So now I'm going to really screw you for the price. So what 5 Harvest O are doing, and there's another one which escapes my mind, is that it's using blockchain to basically fund directly farmers using NFTs and so on. But blockchain has obviously this transparent way of the money reaching the farmer in question. So you have this money trail so to speak. Because part of, I think, of the problem with government is that, okay, they go through a cooperative, but the challenge is that, well, if I'm giving the money to the cooperative, then the corporatie, then how do I know that money is going to the right place?
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of problems, complex as they may seem, but there are some people, some companies, which one of them is Five Harvester. They brought one of the immigration officials from Bali onto the show, actually.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting.
And Australian Aid also is helping this. Some of it is like is helping the NGOs to try to create this a better supply chains in terms of the agricultures on that. Yeah.
Okay, so Elena, do you have the microphone, darling? Yes, you do. So look, the question for you is, why did you enroll? What are you looking to learn? Okay, from enrolling in SGU, and then the final question to Soebowo will be, Dr. Soebowo will be, we've had this session on investing in Indonesia. We've gone very deep. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone here has as well. So is there anything left that you wanted to say? And this can be reiterating something that you've said already, or it might be something that is like, I would love to explain something about that. All right, so that will be the last question for you. But first, we'll go to Elena. Yeah.
All right. Actually, I think you summarized it pretty much well before. Thank you. It's networking, right? To get to know new people. But another thing is that I was considering some MBA program internationally, and I have a pretty much good international background by studying and working in the different countries for the different big companies and the governments. And what is missing now for me, I think, is a better understanding of the Indonesian business background. Even though I'm living here for over 10 years now, but we were doing our family business, right? But I've been also quite much involved in my family life and my kids, so I couldn't go far. So I need to learn and understand more about Indonesian business background, right? What is it built on? And basically to learn it, I think from the people who is firsthand involved in it is a best solution, rather than also going and trying to do, mistakes by myself. And another thing is also, which is pretty much important for me, is again, because I'm still a mother and a wife and a business owner, I cannot go far and take a 1 year gap year, one gap year. I would love to, but I think they wouldn't be happy with that. I can go somewhere else. So the convenience of receive the education fully online is another big plus for me. So I can mingle it between my, daily life.
Thank you, Elena. And thanks for being a good sport, right? Because we don't practice anything here. We just put you in there. And so I really appreciate that, right? So now just before we go to the final question, I just want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to have some food and some drinks very shortly. And look, I just want to say that, firstly, I just want to thank you, Dr. Soebowo and Ilham, for coming down from Jakarta to see us. And I'm sure this is the start of something. And we've got all this wonderful footage we're going to use, and people which are, generally speaking, interested, in MBA and the whole model that you're putting forward, and the fact that you can do online as a hybrid as well, online, offline, and you can grab that network. You can create those connections with industry leaders in multiple industries, which then help to push you forward way after the MBA is done. I obviously want to thank the audience, those who are here in person and the ones who are online, having a look, and I'm sure you've picked and learnt some great things, as I surely have as well. Now, next week, we've got an incredible guest, Richard, who in Australia, we just met him tonight. It's funny how this works out. And so basically, he was fined, I think it was $18 million from the Australian government over a book. And he's an absolute business genius. So he's here. I think he's just traveling through. So we're going to pick him up and we're going to put a flyer together and have him here next week, which will be a lot of fun. So that one's coming. And look, just make sure that you keep your eyes obviously on SpeakuP Monday, all our different channels. Feel free to look at the last 240 episodes that we've recorded. Look at those. Obviously, we're here, SGU, Swiss German University. So if something of what you've heard tonight, it may be live or it may be on replay, one of the many who watch it on replay, feel free to reach out to them through the chosen means that I'm sure Dr. Soebowo will explain about in a second. And thanks again to Tropical Nomad. So please, over to you just to finish us off.
Okay, thank you. Once again, thank you for inviting us, Robert. So basically, I just want to say, with talking about is there Indonesia as an investment opportunity? The answer is yes. Okay, because we have the marketplace, we have the people, we have 375 million. So that is the huge opportunity, as well as on the natural resource and things like that. But I think investor needs to be aware of this, the characteristic from, I'm talking about the social, economic, social politics and the social culture. And because we are a very vast country with so many islands, we have different culture embedded in those areas. So these three parts play quite differently, especially in the social culture part of it. But again, I think opportunity is more when you see differences, when you see more differentiation, that you can see more opportunities. It's just it depends on which area that you want to do. You can be on the consumption side of it, or if you want to do on the production, obviously that will create the value as what saying. But there are challenges, so I think that is the thing. But isn't that is high risk has written, so to speak? Okay, otherwise you won't be in Indonesia, right?
That's right. That's right.
Right. So,
and look, how can people get in touch with the MBA program? Should they be excited to actually come and do it?
Oh well, you can contact us through the website, or I think Ilham is here, and we also will give the numbers, so you can please feel free, okay. Or if you're in Jakarta, then we'll have to grab a coffee. That's fine, okay, because you're kind of laid back and open. Not necessary that come to the campus and things like that. You know, we can chit chat over other things. You know, that's like Toby. If you're interested in the art, I can give you some of the pointers in terms of the program, things like that. Yeah.
Dr. Soebowo Musa, Swiss German University, thank you very much. Round of applause. See you next week.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for the invitation.
So what we're going to do is take a quick